Okay, it's December 8th, 2018. So Republicans have just released the transcript from James Comey questioning this week on James Comey over a number of issues. Clinton investigation, one topic that they are asking about. Also, the Anthony Weiner laptop. And this is something that people want a lot of different answers still about the Weiner laptop, about the classified information that was contained on there, other documents that have been allegedly held on the Weiner laptop, these so-called life insurance folders that people have talked about as well. Now, they just dropped this transcript. It's over 200 pages long, so I haven't, it's just been released in the last hour, so we're still going through it, and there's a couple of different things related to the Weiner laptop that I've already just done a quick search for that it seems like they have overlooked a number of issues, unfortunately. Some of this comes from the IG report. There are a couple of major questions. This is what they're saying, just a quick context. People probably heard about the subpoena against Comey that was earlier this week. They're now saying that the chairman of House Judiciary and House Oversight and Government Reform Committees released a transcript of an interview conducted Friday with former FBI Director James Comey. Comey appeared in response to a subpoena for his testimony. Former FBI chief initially sought a public hearing before the committees, which are investigating the FBI's handling of the Clinton email and this alleged collusion investigation as well. Again, going into the transcript, if you go deep into the transcript, they talk about other issues, the Weiner laptop. They do have several questions about that, but from what I see, they're not getting into some of the issues, some of the big issues from the IG report mainly that people were hoping there might be some answers to from Comey. Comey, even yesterday, they were warning us, had refused to answer a lot of questions that Republicans had asked him, but there was some interesting info from this transcript, at least what I've seen so far. They're saying after a legal battle. Now they add that it was after a legal battle with Comey where he tried to get out of this closed door testimony. He had requested a public testimony. He finally agreed to appear behind closed doors for this interview on the condition that a transcript of the proceedings be released within 24 hours. According to Virginia Representative Bob Goodlatte and Trey Gowdy, the chairman of Judiciary and Oversight Committees, respectively, Comey will continue his interview on December 17th. So they have also complained, Republicans, that they have not gotten answers on a number of different issues. Comey did refuse to answer some issues, so they're making him come back on the 17th. They did drop some info, though, in the transcript from today, and this has just been released, so I'm just going through it now. This is not going to be the most concise overview of this. I'll probably do a follow-up video, but if you just want to look through it, the audience with me in real time right now, if you find anything as I'm recording live here, I'll jump back and forth between the live chat. There's a couple things that I want to look at here. I'll look at your comments too and just see if there's anything that immediately pops out to you as well. I have the article with the transcript in the description if you want to follow along. But a couple of things. First, I want to look at what they have said about the Weiner laptop and just set up to this. Again, following up on the IG report where there was a lot of criticism of Comey, things that came out in that report, more info on Comey's mishandling of both the Clinton investigation and the investigation onto Anthony Weiner's laptop. Very quickly, people probably familiar with the, I guess, rumors of what is contained on Weiner's laptop. We do know for sure that he had classified information that was given to him from Huma Abedin. That's one of Hillary Clinton's closest aides, Huma Abedin, who was married to Anthony Weiner. One of these issues, it ties in with Comey's, this was an unbelievable claim from Comey. One of Comey's claims from the IG report that had been released earlier. People wanted to get some answers as to a claim that Comey made that he didn't know that Anthony Weiner was married to one of Hillary Clinton's closest aides, Huma Abedin, the head of the FBI, James Comey, is claiming that he doesn't know that Anthony Weiner and Huma Abedin are married. This is in 2016 during this investigation. So the interview, this transcript that they just released, they do ask about that investigation. People probably familiar, again, just the info that they have said was on the Weiner laptop, but just very briefly to give some context, one possible insider here, Eric Prince of Blackwater, so he is an insider that would have possible knowledge of what was contained. He said that he was talking to law enforcement sources, and Breitbart did an interview with him back in 2016 talking about what was contained on the Weiner laptop. Prince began by saying he had no problem believing reports that the FBI was highly confident multiple foreign agencies also hacked Hillary Clinton's private email server. Classified info was transferred to Weiner's laptop. He's also claimed, Eric Prince, saying that he had insider knowledge back in 2016. He was claiming of the investigation that could help explain why FBI Director James Comey had to announce he was reopening the investigation into Clinton's email server. This was the quote from Prince. He said, because of Weinergate and the sexting scandal, the NYPD started investigating it. Through a subpoena, through a warrant, they searched his laptop and sure enough found those 650,000 emails. They found way more stuff than just the information pertaining to the inappropriate sexting the guy was doing, Prince claimed. They found State Department emails. This has been later confirmed that they did have classified documents on Weiner's laptop. There was also talk of these life insurance folders as well with other files incriminating info on Hillary Clinton. This is what the rest of what Prince said in 2016. Eric Prince said they found a lot of other really damning criminal information, including money laundering, including the fact that Hillary went to this sex island with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton went there more than 20 times. Hillary Clinton went there at least 6 times. The amount of garbage that they found in these emails of criminal activity by Hillary, by her immediate circle, and even by other Democratic members of Congress was so disgusting, they gave it to the FBI and they said, we're going to go public with this, the NYPD, if you don't reopen the investigation and you don't do the right thing with timely indictments. So since then, people really trying to find out exactly what was contained on these laptops by Anthony Weiner. Meanwhile, James Comey was saying that this was not a high priority issue for him because he didn't even know that Weiner and Huma Abedin were married. So what are they saying in the transcript around this time period from today? What have they questioned Comey about? From what I see, they don't question him about that claim that he's saying he doesn't know that they were even in a relationship. That's a pretty unbelievable claim. I mean, I think that he should have been asked about that. Comey should have been asked about that on Friday if they hadn't. This looks like it's the opening question when they start getting into the Weiner laptop. It's about page 100, and it's page 152 if you have the transcript open. So we'll just look at what one representative has said. He's saying, thank you, let me go to another topic. So earlier in these proceedings, I had the chance to question Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok is this anti-Trump FBI agent. He sent these anti-Trump text messages you've likely heard about. He was also involved in the Clinton investigation, and until he was recently fired for his anti-Trump bias, he was also on the Mueller probe as well. So Peter Strzok has also gotten a lot of criticism lately as well. But this representative asking Comey, saying he had the chance before to question Peter Strzok about leaks from the FBI, and we had this exchange. He says, this is me asking the question, could you explain to me a little bit about Director Comey's fear of leaks from the New York field office and how that, in your view, affected the revelation of the warrant for Weiner's laptop? So that was a question to Strzok, and he's telling this just as a setup to a question of Comey. He says that at the time Strzok responded, you have to ask Director Comey that. This was in response to the question, could you explain to me a little bit about Director Comey's fear of leaks from the New York field office? How did that affect the revelation of the warrant for Weiner's laptop? Strzok had said you have to ask Director Comey. I think there was a discussion, I remember, and particularly some of it was in the context of reporting from Mr. Giuliani and others about connections to New York. So he goes on This is the question that he asks Comey. He says, so let me just ask you what I asked him. How concerned were you about leaks from the New York field office to Rudy Giuliani or other media personalities in 2016? So Comey's saying, I was concerned that there appeared to be in the media a number of stories that might have been based on communications reporters or non-reporters like Rudy Giuliani were having with people in the New York field office in particular. And I want to say mid-October, maybe a little bit later, Mr. Giuliani was making statements that appeared to be based on his knowledge of workings inside the FBI, New York. And then my recollection is there were other stories that there were in the same ballpark that gave me a general concern that we may have a leak problem, unauthorized disclosure problem out of New York. And so I asked that it be investigated. So that is the FBI saying that they fear leaks coming from the NYPD, which doesn't sound too dissimilar from what Eric Prince was saying back in 2016, that the NYPD had threatened to go forward with disclosing this information publicly if the FBI did not reopen the investigation. One other thing, they go on in further detail, I think, with more on the Weiner laptop, but one other thing that I did look for, I just did a quick search for this, but this was one of the main pages. I'm going to go back and forth between these two documents because this is a key thing I know people are going to be asking about in the comments, people likely already commenting about, but from page 294 in the IG report, this was a key thing that a few people had focused on, and I was not sure as to the exact interpretation that some people had made about this page, but it's definitely suspicious the way that this is worded. And again, Comey's initial response to this in the IG report, they definitely should have followed up on this. If they have not, I haven't seen it in the transcript so far from today. From the IG report before, they're talking about this meeting between Comey and another agent, Coleman, that took place on October 4th. Comey's Outlook calendar for October 4th contains an entry for morning briefs from 8:15 to 9. That is immediately followed by an entry for a meeting with Coleman from 9 to 9:30. Coleman told us that he could not recall this briefing with Comey. This is the meeting where they reference Hillary Clinton and Foundation and crime against children as well. You may have seen that, just that one section of this document passed around, but this was the setup, and equally worrying is the response from Comey. It definitely points to some kind of cover-up that nobody can recall this briefing. It sounds like some pretty important info that they went over on October 4th. Meanwhile, they're saying Coleman told us that he could not recall this briefing with Comey. Coleman stated that staying behind to brief Comey would be consistent with normal practice, but added that he did not recall this specific instance. Coleman told us that it would be unusual to have a one-on-one meeting with Comey, and told us someone else would typically be present at these briefings, such as the DD or ADD. So with all these things that make this a unique meeting, they're still somehow saying that nobody remembers what took place here. While not remembering this meeting, Coleman speculated that this may have been a one-on-one meeting with Comey to discuss Coleman's upcoming retirement from the FBI in December 2016. Coleman told us that he regularly took notes in a journal. Coleman's notes from October 4th contained the following entry. So this was Coleman's notes from October 4th. Same day he has this meeting that he and Comey cannot remember anything about conveniently. His notes say 1, Anthony Weiner, 2, unrelated, 3, Weiner texting 15-year-old explicit, 9/26, federal SW, federal search warrant, likely, iPhone/iPad/laptop, initial analysis of laptop, thousands emails, Hillary Clinton and Foundation, crime against children. So people have highlighted that, and a couple of different interpretations. Some people wondering if that is, it comes right after Hillary Clinton and Foundation crime against children. So they're wondering if there was a connection between the two, or is it the charges that they were initially talking about with Weiner and these sexting charges as well, and then tying that in with other documents related to Hillary Clinton and Foundation. It's fairly vague the way that it's worded, and either way, you would think that it's a pretty important meeting, that they would be able to clarify that information. That's something that people would definitely want answers on. Just doing a quick search for that term, not seeing anything that directly references that part of the IG report. That is one of the main things that did stick out, though. This is what they did ask about the Weiner laptop. From the transcript, we'll go through further what they said on Friday. Just going to quickly look at your comments here. So we do have the link in the description again if you'd like to follow along. Inside the link. So I have this link in the video description that just gives a brief summary of the setup to this meeting today, and then contained in it at the very end, they say the transcript can be found here, and that's a link straight to the oversight.house.gov document if you want to follow along. So I'm on page 152 looking at Anthony Weiner. Again, just looking at this live, I'll probably do a follow-up with kind of a more concise version of some of this info after we look at it here, but we can look at it together a little bit right now. So they go on, they ask more about Anthony Weiner. They say, let me go on to another topic. Earlier these proceedings, I had the chance to question Peter Strzok. He asks the same question to Comey. Comey says, I was concerned that there appeared to be in the media a number of stories that might have been based on communications reporters or non-reporters like Rudy Giuliani. So Comey was specifically calling out Giuliani here, saying that he feared leaks from the NYPD office. And that does not sound too different from what Eric Prince was saying again, that the NYPD had basically forced the FBI to reopen the investigation or threatened to leak this info. Mr. Comey, so he follows up, the representative asking Comey, says, oh, okay, so this investigation began at some point after you asked for the investigation to start. I think sometime in October, maybe they didn't get going on it until November, an effort led by our internal affairs component, as I understand it, he says, began to try and understand. Do we have leaks? There was one effort led by their internal affairs component that began to try to understand if they have leaks and what are they. Asking response, and to your knowledge, has anyone been held accountable for those purported leaks? Comey says, not to my knowledge. The investigation ultimately led to disciplining of FBI Deputy Director McCabe because the investigation turned up communications that he had apparently authorized a pending investigation of the Clinton Foundation. And I don't know beyond that. So he asks, how about anything related to the New York field office? Comey responds, I never got a report out on that before I was fired. So he responds saying, I see. Okay, here's the concern, Director Comey. If no one's been held accountable, especially from the New York field office, and if there are leaks from the New York field office to potentially people like Rudy Giuliani, who's the current lawyer for the president, then they have an active window into the investigation of them. And that's why I think a lot of people are concerned about whether that investigation concluded or not. Who would we talk to about this particular issue if we wanted to learn the status of that investigation? It's asking Comey. So Comey responds, well, the FBI. However, you normally talk to there would be the place to start. I don't know whether they're in a position to comment or not. I don't know what its status was when I was fired in May. It goes on. Not sure if this is a follow further on additional questions on the Weiner laptop. I'm just going to skip ahead to the next mention of that, page 172. I think he may get into a separate topic. So then a different representative is asking on page 172. Let me answer or ask some questions regarding the Inspector General's report. Okay, so this is getting more info related to the IG report. I think it was around the 26th, that September 26th, you received some indication about the Weiner laptop, 2016. And it stated this started in New York, and people started to see emails flourishing, and FBI agents thought it was crucial. I'm looking for my materials here. Thought it was crucial that they began to investigate. And it seems that there was some suggestion in the IG's report of a question whether there was unnecessary delay. So this partly and I don't think they directly reference James Comey's, claim of ignorance, that he doesn't know that Abedin and Weiner were in a relationship, but this would sort of tie in. Was Comey somewhat responsible for an unnecessary delay, or was there an unnecessary delay of the Weiner investigation in September? Comey responds, "Yes, I remember that." Representative Jackson Lee responds, "But it seems that he concluded that no emails, texts, anything, conversations he could find to suggest that it was purposeful delay. And I think that's important to be on record. Do you agree with that?" Comey says, "I agree. I didn't realize until I read the IG's report that chronology, because it wasn't presented to me for decision until the end of October. But there was reason to believe it would have been ready for decision earlier than that. But I never saw any indication that that was an intentional delay." So she responds, "So let me read this last text or last comment. As I said, I'm going to go as quickly as I can. Last paragraph on that particular section regarding Mr. Weiner's laptop." So last paragraph, I think this is from the IG report, on this section they're referencing regarding the Weiner laptop. It says Comey, Lynch, and Yates faced difficult choices in October 2016. However, we found it extraordinary that Comey assessed that it was best that the FBI director not speak directly with the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General about how best to navigate this most important decision and mitigate the resulting harms, and that Comey's decisions resulted in the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General concluding that it would be counterproductive to speak directly with the FBI director. We believe that open and candid communications among leaders in the department and its components is essential for the effective functioning of the department. Without you suggesting what their thoughts were upon reflection, because this, as I started out, was an election of the leaders of the free world, one of them was going to be elected, and I know earlier in this report it was an assumption that Secretary Clinton would win. And I don't consider that a factual basis to not do something. And then the idea that you didn't want to be in the position of concealing, upon reflection or not reflection, why did you not speak to or find it important to speak to both the deputy and the attorney general so there could have been a collaborative decision on what to do? So that's the question to Comey. Comey responds, "That's a really good question. My thinking at the time was I need to give them the chance to take this decision from me, but I also need to give them the chance to avoid it. And so that's what I did. I told them, I think I had my staff tell them, I think I need to tell Congress about this, but I'd be happy to talk to you." And they came back saying, "We think it's a bad idea, but we don't want to talk to him." I read that, I may be wrong, but I read that as them saying, "Over to you, Jim," and this drives my wife crazy that I was willing to take that hit. But I thought it was important that if they don't want to be involved in the decision, that I make the decision. Now that I maybe should have done what I maybe should have done was say no back to you, Loretta or Sally, but that felt cowardly to me at the time. And if I were to live life over again, I might have marched across the street and said, "Hey, you folks see it differently than I, and why," instead of the way I approached it, But I gave them the chance and they said, don't need to talk to you. So that's Comey's response. She follows up asking, so look at good practices. Can we leave it on the point? Yes, march across the street and you sit down as a group and make the final decision. Would that have been, without saying it was cowardly, without saying they didn't want to do it? But that's sort of DOJ, because you were having something so at a heightened level that would have been the better practice. Mr. Comey responds, maybe, but I actually don't want to. I really like those two people. And I don't let them too much off the hook. They're the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. They know what I think. I have to do this thing, so call me up and talk to me about it. Give me your views of it. You're my boss. But instead, they communicate back saying, over to you, Jim. So I'm not sure I want to take all the fault for that. I agree with you. I think the best practice would have been the three of us to sit down and talk it through. I'm going to continue to scroll through here. Again, a lot of claims of Comey trying to come across as being completely incompetent or ignorant of things that he definitely should know as head of the FBI. Seems like some kind of way for a cover. It's part of this cover-up, I think. Comey go on to ask more about the laptop. Gowdy has some questions about the Weiner laptop as well. Right after this, 197 is the next page I'm going to just look at here for a moment. They say, these are questions from Trey Gowdy. So Gowdy is asking Director Comey, what element was missing in July of 2016 when you had the press conference that might have been found in October on Anthony Weiner's computer? Mr. Comey says, I don't know. It's an element. But what was the key ingredient that was missing in the Clinton investigation was any indication that she knew what she was doing, something that she shouldn't be doing. And so what the Weiner trove potentially held was evidence of that intention, especially in the form of the emails from her BlackBerry during her first 3 months as Secretary of State. So saying that they were looking for those emails in particular, this is the claim, to see if they could verify that Clinton was knowingly doing something wrong here. That was another claim by Comey, saying that this was negligent or Clinton didn't know what she was doing. People didn't buy that from Comey to begin with. It seemed like that was just a claim that Comey was making to help protect Clinton anyway, but they are saying that they were looking for evidence to prove or disprove that these BlackBerry emails from the first 3 months as Secretary of State in particular, they wanted to focus on. Mr. Gowdy says, tell me how the existence of that information may have impacted the element of intent. So how would those BlackBerry emails have impacted his conclusion, again, his unbelievable conclusion, the one made by Comey that Clinton didn't know what she was doing wrong? Gowdy asks, how would it have made a difference, these BlackBerry documents? Comey says, again, I don't know what I'd call. I don't know whether I would describe it as an element. My understanding is, and I remember you and I talking about this, it seems like years ago, the Department of Justice has always required, before it will bring the misdemeanor indications of intention or harm to the United States or obstruction of justice, those kinds of things. And that was the ingredient we didn't have in the Clinton case. And so the Weiner documents held the prospect that we, because it might contain evidence of the beginning of her use of her unclass system, might hold that evidence. Gowdy says, well, I'm sure you can see Because a smart guy and a good lawyer, the next question is, how can you begin to even draft this memo if you haven't interviewed 24 witnesses? You haven't interviewed 24 witnesses, including the target, but you're already drafting this memo. But the moment you find out that there may be a computer you have not accessed, the Weiner laptop, you reopen the investigation. Whatever you found on Weiner's computer, could you not have also found you were interviewing? Could you not have also found the same info if you chose to interview the 24 witnesses? Mr. Comey responds, potentially. What I was doing in May was 10 months into an investigation, seeing on the current course and speed where it's going to end, planning. Just, I'm sure you did too. I drafted plenty of indictments before I finished investigations because it looked like we were going to get enough to charge a person. And so that's what it was about. And again, I know I said this in response to Democrats' questions, the prospect, what made Weiner's computer a horse of a different color. What made Weiner's computer a horse of a different color was the size of this collection of documents and the emails potentially from the first 3 months as Secretary of State, a very different kettle of fish, he says. So he's emphasizing these emails again from the first 3 months of Clinton's time as Secretary of State. That is what he's saying they wanted specifically from the Weiner laptop. At least that's what he's focusing on Friday during this questioning. Gowdy says, is it because, and again, I know you don't like answering hypotheticals, and I don't actually like asking them, but what in particular, the beginning stages of her tenure, would have addressed an element that you thought was missing? Mr. Comey says, oh, that's easy to answer. If there was going to be evidence that she knew she was communicating in a way she wouldn't, or that she shouldn't, explicit evidence, if there was going to be that evidence, common sense tells you it's likely to be at the beginning when someone encountered her mode or means of communication and said, hey, boss, you know you can't do that. You know you can't talk about this kind of thing or that kind of thing on an unclassified system. It's much more likely to be at the beginning, which we never found those 3 months, than much later. Gowdy says, all right, let me ask you about the beginning. Brian Pagliano, when the FBI interviewed him, who did he say instructed him to set up the server? Kelly, Mr. Kelly responds saying, I'm sorry, who is the name, please? Gowdy says, Brian Pagliano. Comey says, I don't remember. Gowdy says, do you remember Pagliano? Comey says, yeah, I remember the name. Gowdy says, a Department of State employee who, by all indications, set up the server for Hillary Clinton. Do you know whether he was asked what he was told about why this was being done? Comey says, I don't today. Gowdy says, could that witness also have provided some evidence of intent based on those conversations? Comey says, the guy who set up the server? Gowdy says, sure. Comey says, maybe. Gowdy asks, do you know where he worked? Comey responds, no, I mean, I'm sure I did at some point. I don't remember. And Gowdy responds, he worked at the State Department, or he was paid by the Department of State. Did the Bureau pull any hour sheets or performance evaluations to see whether or not he actually did work at the Department of State? Comey says, I don't know. Gowdy says, did the Bureau talk to his supervisor? Comey says, I don't remember, certainly today. I don't know whether I ever knew that. Comey really should have been fired if these are truthful answers, that he doesn't know about so many different aspects of this investigation, and he's just claiming that he's completely incompetent. I mean, that's the best case possible scenario. All evidence that we've seen so far points to him being in on an intentional cover-up here. But I've looked at a few pages here. I'm not sure how long we've been going. Oh, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. I think I might take a break here for now. I'm going to go through, I think, and try to read the documents in full. There's quite a few different pages. There's a lot of pages here, 230 235 pages. We've looked at quite a few here. I wanted to just focus in on the first couple things they were saying about the Weiner laptop. Maybe we can just do a quick scan through here, see if there's anything that just quickly pops out. But I think I will probably do a little bit more investigating into this, and it's definitely a lot to follow up here on the 17th. If there is another interview that they're planning, they're saying that they're going to force Comey to answer more questions on the 17th. He did refuse to answer a lot here, clearly. So one other exchange, they mentioned Abedin and Cheryl Mills here. We'll just see what the setup here is. One other person asking Comey, do you recall that in the course of the mid-year investigation that the FBI became aware that personal aides Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton's lawyer Cheryl Mills also mishandled classified information? Comey said, I don't remember specifically. I remember there was some, no, that was after I, so he cuts off, and person cuts in and asks, and again, by mishandled, I'm referring to classified information going across an unclassified device that they, personnel or work device that they had. Comey responds again saying, I don't remember that about Miss Mills. I remember a concern about that about Miss Abedin. But what I was remembering is from the Weiner stuff from after. I remember that being an issue after October 27th or 8th. Let me know what you think about what we've looked at so far. If there are any other things that pop out just immediately. Thank you for the super chats as well. I do have a link to the just summary of today from the Daily Caller, and at the very end they have the full transcript. If you want to take a look, tell me what you think, and I will do a follow-up on this. Thanks, everyone.